Thanks. Okay, guys. Okay, so we're going to start on time. Welcome, everyone, to today's Power Lunch. I was really excited to get here myself. Welcome at Minnetonka and France. I think the France people we're going to Minnetonka Park and Union Plaza. The first thing I want to do is thank all of you for your participation during co-working week. We got some of the best testimonials to put on our website. So go in, look at the video page, and look at some of the testimonials that people in the community have given. They are unbelievable, and I want to thank you so much. Today's Power Lunch presenter is Halleen. John was one of the when I was really doing a lot of concept about how we were going to work virtual programs, I met John very early on. I think at the time we didn't even have 40 virtual clients. We're now at 620. So we've come a long way, haven't we, John?
Yes.
John was somebody that I talked to a lot about developing culture and what we were going to do and why we were going to be different at that time. And all the time that I have met John, I'm not even going off this script. I know that you have multiple degrees in sociology and psychology, and that you worked in a clinical setting, and then you came to a business track.
Yeah.
I still am not positive about all of the things that you do, so I wanted to get here. But we had so many discussions, and I think that we were so like-minded on a lot of the things that we wanted to present. So here we are, fast forward like 4.5 years later, and I think that it really has come to fruition beyond what my wildest dreams could be. So John is going to talk to us today about the Entrepreneur's Challenge and how to improve business culture. I know he did it with my business. I hope he can do it for all of yours, and it's just an evolution, isn't it, John?
Everything changes.
And I wanted to say, too, that one of the things about GapWorks was that John even met his new business partner in an office center, at an office center function.
France.
So you know what? Things do happen. And culturally, these were some of the things that we talked about, not just getting clients, but what this collaboration could lead the next group of entrepreneurs to do different and new things, and I think we have. And so I'm excited to hear your presentation. Thank you so much, John.
All right.
Here we go. Woo!
All right, it's good to be here on Office Center TV today. And to continue the story, yes, I did meet Mark Spliers, my business partner at the France networking. And once we wanted to incorporate under a new name, one of the concepts I brought to our business is this whole notion of gap, that basically all of life is a series of formal but mostly informal gap analyses that we all go through, which is the difference between where you're at and where you'd like to be. And we were struggling with what to call ourselves. And we did probably what many of you did. You took the jargon generators and you started putting some things together, synergistic and interactive and collaborative partners and group, and none of that made any sense. And it was after another networking meeting in France. We were sitting around with about 3 or 4 other fellow entrepreneurs from office centers, and we were talking about that we needed to come up with a name, and it popped into my head, well, we work on gaps. Hey, maybe it's just GapWorks. So we had an instant focus group with the people that were there, and I said, what do you think? Yeah, I like that. What do you think? Yeah, I like that. So we had unanimity. They liked the name, and that's what we called ourselves, GapWorks, with an X. Now, what GapWorks does is things like, and by the way, I don't have a live monitor, so for those of you that are remote, I can't see you. I have to look at the screen once in a while. So it's not the, yeah, it's just the way it is. But these are the kinds of things we do. We focus on things like business creation. How do you create a customer? We focus on customer experience. How do you keep a customer? But wrapped around all that is this notion of culture. And me being by education, I guess, a behavioral humanist, I look at things very much from how did this come to be? Cause and effect, correlated data. What's causing what is influencing what? And that's what culture is. Culture is behavior. And so we look at things like leadership and employee engagement, and all the data is very clear that without an engaged workforce, you don't have engaged customers. You just don't have it. But the problem is, when I was putting together this information, is I'm dealing with fellow entrepreneurs, which are really mostly micro companies. Now, we're two people, and I don't know if you have data, by the way, it'd be interesting to know what the average size of the client is at virtual office center and office centers, real offices. I bet it probably doesn't average more than 3. It's probably less than that. So you're dealing with cultures that are basically up to you. You don't have a lot of stratification. You don't have multiple roles. You're probably doing multiple roles yourself. And the whole point of a business is to create and keep a customer. So the entrepreneur's challenge is that everybody sells and everybody serves. You're responsible for bringing the client in. You're responsible for making them happy. That's a big job. That's a lot of responsibility for 1 or 2 people. And so we wanted to break down today's conversation, and I'd like to probably wrap up after about 20 minutes, because I'm hoping that this information is interesting enough that it'll generate some conversation and maybe some questions from other areas. But the entrepreneurial persona really is a word that's used in contemporary language to describe how you appear to the world. It's your personality, it's your behavioral makeup, it's your knowledge, it's your application, it's how people see you. And as an entrepreneur, that's really important because you are the company. And we think that 2 components that need to be addressed really thoroughly is this notion of how do you sell yourself more effectively and how do you serve your clients more effectively. And it comes down to things like human motivation. Motivational psychology is a discipline in and of itself, but I kind of make it simple in the sense that as human beings, we're either trying to avoid something or we're trying to get to something. It's a basic the dichotomy of, I want less of that and I want more of this. And that's true about all your customers. When you approach someone with your product or your service, it would be useful, I think, for you to start conceptualizing, well, I wonder what their motivation is. And these motivations are comprised of both rational and emotional components. And the research in customer experience is that it's largely emotional, is that they are more concerned about how they feel about doing business with you than the product or service that you're offering by itself. So once again, this adds additional pressure. When we talk, and we've been out, I've been doing this for really 20 years, and you talk to businesses, they're all concerned with more. They need more clients, they need more revenue, they need more profits. And by the way, they'd like to know how they can predict the future a little bit better. How can we count on next year being a little bit better than this year? And I would guess that it's the same with all of the entrepreneurs at Office Center. When you look at how human beings are put together and how organizations function, there's the hard side and then there's the soft side. The hard stuff is all the requirements that you have to have in order to make your business function. And we've had wonderful presentations here on marketing and social media and EOS, and I don't know, all this stuff, or SEO. I get it. I get confused with all this stuff, and it's great stuff. So I'm assuming that you've got that lined up. And I want to talk to you about the components on the soft side. And as entrepreneurs, how's your vision? How are you leading your effort? Are you operating from a point of integrity and ethics? Can people count on it? Are you engaged in it? No, I mean, do you meet each day with the aspiration of, boy, I really want to make a difference out there? Those are all soft side components. And I'd be hammering things like empathy and emotional intelligence throughout this conversation that we're having today, because this stuff is important. As technology has changed the retail industry, what has not changed for people like us is our ability to understand other people and their realization that we understand them. That is a basic differentiator in anybody providing a product or service. we're big believers in mental maps. And when I got together with Mark, he had a process that he was using, and I looked at it and we talked about it. And we kind of condensed it into 4 things. That there's a difference between anybody's actual state and their preferred state. Where you been? Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? And how will you keep that going? That's a very simple model that has application in a lot of areas of our lives, because we have these differences. My actual state is not good enough. I need something different. I need something better. Well, how are you going to do that? This is a rule of thumb that we use. Conceived of this a few years ago. A very simple visual that there has to be a balance of performance metrics and what we call performance aesthetics. Let's talk about performance metrics. Let's say you're marketing yourself. You're out as an entrepreneur and you're reaching out to the potential customer base. There are things you have to do from a metric standpoint. Once in a while, I have to pick up the phone. Once in a while, I have to send out an email. Once in a while, I have to send out a newsletter. Once in a while, I have to show up at a networking meeting. Once in a while, I have to go to seminars. These are all metrics. These are all things that you have to do to keep your business going. But we say that it also needs to be balanced by the aesthetics. And the aesthetics really are how you go about it. For example, and we teach a lot of sales training. And one of the things we talk about is you could make 100 sales contacts a week. That is a metric. But how you go about those 100 make all the difference. Do you have a differentiator? Do you have an opening statement? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the ability to communicate? So it doesn't good to call up 100 people and say, "You want this?" "Oh, you don't? Okay, thanks." It's how you do it. So this balancing effort is really, really crucial. When we talk about entrepreneurial attributes, attributes are really things that comprise you, things that people notice. Positive affect, positive emotion. They like the way you look. They like somebody's new hairdo. You know? They like your brochure. They like your website. These are all attributes. Well, the entrepreneur leader, and we've broken it down for you, kind of simple little concept today. You got to have things like EQ, emotional intelligence. And by the way, as a practitioner of these arts, these are not things. Emotional intelligence is not something that Dan Goleman discovered a few years ago. When he started writing about it. Emotional intelligence has been around a long time. It's all about how people effectively communicate and interact with each other. It's been going on ever since we were using clubs to get lunch. Okay?
They're calling down.
And you can't buy emotional intelligence. You can't just go out and say, "I need some of that, so how much does it cost?" Talents and strengths, guiding principles, vision, integrity. And then you have your salesperson part of yourself. Are you communicating from a standpoint of realness? Are you genuine? Are you authentic? Do you have a curiosity about what people need? About how you can help them? And can you communicate that effectively? Then when you service, this is something that really grates at me ever since I started studying customer experience a few years ago, is I notice how absent it is when I'm out in commerce. And what I urge you to do, if you think all of this is just theory and gobbledygook, just pay attention for the next week when you encounter a salesperson that's trying to sell you something. How does it make you feel? And we're going to get into a little more detail about that. And when you have a problem with something that you've already bought, is there any sense of empathy? I understand how you feel that you bought this and it don't work. I get that. Those are things you never hear, by the way. And are you a creative thinker and a problem solver? This stuff is crucial. We talk a lot about mental maps and processes, and this is something really, really simple that we've put together that you can use. And more about awareness than either of these other two, and in fact, I think I will.
Then let's do it.
I'll just do it. One of the aspects of awareness is, can you arrive at a sense of authenticity, of genuineness? Now, as a former therapist, that's one of the things we always try to get at, is this notion that how you think and how you act are actually the same. And if you're acting not well and your thinking is not well, somehow we've got to bring these things into congruency. We've got to bring them together. And some of the processes that you can use, not only for your prospects, but it first starts with you, is what am I really like? And how can I find out some things about myself? And there are things, assessments that you can take. And probably many of you taken some personality tests. Some of them are very, very questionable, by the way. And I have extreme caution about some of the personality testing that's done in businesses these days. I have very deep reservations about a lot of it. But let me talk about a couple that are basically innocuous. They're benign and they're very useful. One of the things you can do is look at your strengths. And I'm guessing that probably, well, just as a show of hands, I'll bet you half of you at least have taken strength finders. Yeah. And it's something you can do yourself. It's $20. They published the book. They fully intended a regular person to be able to do that. Now, it's particularly useful. You can work with somebody that can help you work through it, and help you understand some of the things. And the other one, I do urge people to go through probably the Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Once again, it's published, $20. You don't need a psychologist to do it. It's helpful if you have a learned person that can help you interpret it and understand it. Can you hold that question until we get a little bit later? But those are a couple things I really do recommend. The other thing you can do is get a little coaching. Is talk to somebody that can ask you some difficult questions. And maybe you do it for 3 or 4 sessions. Short term. The modern psychology is short-term, high-impact change. It's no longer Freud where you're a patient for life. It's not that way. People don't have that kind of time. They don't have that kind of money. So they need to be able to effectively make changes in a short period of time. One of the ways you can do that is with a coach who knows about those kinds of things. Now, here's an idea I've dreamed up that I want to offer to Office Center for free. Remember that little focus group experience when we were trying to get our name? If you're an established company, a lot of the owners of these companies are going to what are called peer groups. And I know many of the people that run these things around town, and they're very, very effective and very useful. Problem is for entrepreneurs like us is they tend to be somewhat costly. So here's an idea. You've seen those movies about like the Paper Chase and medical school movies and TV shows where people form study groups. Why not take advantage of the 640 virtual Office Center people? Form yourself a little group of 3 to 4. Find 3 or 4 people that you like, that you get along with, and do an informal peer group. Costs you nothing. You can meet at a coffee shop. No, we don't do that. Where do we meet?
Right here.
We meet at Office Center. You can meet right here. You bring in your donuts and you have a little peer group and you challenge each other and you ask each other questions about how's it going, what can we do differently. Use the little 4-step process. Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? How are you going to keep it going? Do that. And GapWorks would be very happy to be involved with, once in a while, hire a facilitator, twice a year. Have somebody come from the outside that says, okay, I'm listening to all this, but I'm not buying it. Somebody to really push you a little bit. You can do this for nothing here. Costs you absolutely nothing. So let's talk about the 2 big challenges of creating and keeping a customer. I believe in this notion of a fair exchange. I believe that ever since the barter system, what people are looking for is value for money. They want to know that if I'm going to give you my hard-earned money, I want a value for it. So that has to be there. And if you're offering goods and services, you have to have capabilities. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have technical knowledge, all to increase the probability of getting another client. So let's talk about sales process. Factually, very few salespeople have ever had formal sales training. We see this, Mark and I see this when we go out talking to companies about their business development process and find out, well, nobody's really been trained in anything. And the question you have to ask yourself, am I winging it? Or am I doing something systematic where I can replicate this over and over, and I know exactly where I am when I'm talking to somebody? That's what a sales process is. Now, the problem for entrepreneurs is sales training is very costly. It's a 2 or 3 day event can be up to $2,000 to $3,000. Most of us don't have that kind of resources as small business people.
Time involved too.
Huh?
The time involved too.
Well, sure. No, and we have an existing client right now. And here's a good example of what I'm talking about. They're flush. They're a very large company, and they didn't want formal sales training. They wanted interactive, scenario-based simulation training, and that's what we've provided for them. And that's the kind of stuff that actually we're toying around with some ideas of maybe how we might provide some very condensed but yet high impact experiences for small companies so that you can learn to sell better, so that you can understand the emotions of your prospect, and particularly the impact of what you do. Here's what salespeople typically don't ask. They don't probe deep enough below the layers to find out what's the impact that I'm going to be able to provide for you. Because the more a person understands the impact, the more likely they are to say, you know what, I'm going to go with you. I'm gonna sign up. I'm going to buy your thing. I'm going to buy your product or your service. Now, by the way, this is really oversimplified. This is something that I've been putting together for the last decade, and this is just a touch into it. Then you have to be able to make sure you match up. And there's some really good books out there. I'll be happy to recommend anybody who wants to do a self-learning process in this. There's some very, very good books. And they all talk about making sure that you are matching up with what you've discovered, that you're not guessing, that you're not making it up. So that once you get into the collaboration process, which is the experience with your client, you're all on the same page. And if the impact is understood, that's what you measure going forward as to the effectiveness of what you put together. That's the relationship. That's why people get together for the long term, is because they understand the impact of that collaboration. And they can both sides talk to it, and everybody understands it. You cannot hide your intention. I got that from, I think that was Mahan Kalsa's book, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. The best book I've ever read on sales. The best, bar none. I get nothing out of that guy. I've recommended his book ever for years and years and years.
Repeat it.
Yeah.
Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mahan Kalsa with a K. And he talks about you can't fake your intention. If your intention is to deceive somebody, if your intention is to pull the wool, to do a fast one, they're gonna realize it. Take into consideration the motivations of the people that you're talking about. We like to talk about building a sales toolbox. That in a toolbox, it's how do I ask better questions, more qualifying questions? How do I get at deeper meaning? How do I get people to tell me what they are really experiencing so that I can determine if I can help them? We talk about rapport as a tool. How do you get a conversation going where they have a sense of, well, here's a real person. Here's a person who's trying to understand me, not just trying to sell me something. To be able to listen and to give feedback. And say, well, I just heard you say that this is what you're looking for. And by the way, if that were to happen, what would that mean to you? Peeling those layers back, getting at the real impact. Telling stories, your differentiators. Saying this is something we did for somebody else. Might that work here? And one of the most effective tools that you need to build is, how do you deal with objections? How do you deal when people say, well, you're too expensive, or I don't know you? Objections are just a way for someone to say, I need more. I need more information here. It's not I don't want to do any business with you. It's not that I don't like you. I just don't understand enough. Tell me more. Oops. What happened, Corey? Did we shut the world off? No. And this is all tied in to customer and client experience. We have a way of positioning this as a continuum, that nothing ever starts and nothing ever stops. It just goes on and on. So that when you approach somebody initially, it's with the idea of, how would this play out over time? Because how you sell is a preview of how you'll serve, particularly if you're a consulting and if you're really in the intangible kind of world. If you're offering a service that's abstract and difficult to understand, the interaction in the sales part is really a setup for the interaction on the service part. Okay? And it's all connected. And being able to measure the impact over time and measure the experience. Unless your business is a one-time transaction, where you wouldn't be real concerned about that. But if you're looking for ongoing business, or if you're looking for referrals, if you're looking for someone to say, I worked with this guy or this woman, and I'm telling you, it changed my life, changed my business. You should talk to them. If that's the thing you're trying to build, then you have to understand that selling and serving are all connected. Things that you can do is you can interview your clients. And I'm not talking about just sending out a little questionnaire. Frankly, I'm really tired of the phone calls from some of the companies that I use. How did it go? And it's not a person who actually works there. It's someone they've hired. They don't care. I gave some feedback to a business the other day, and basically I said, you took advantage of me. You sold me something that just didn't work. And guess how interested and concerned that person was?
Thank you.
Not at all. Not at all. I said, feel free to involve the owners of your company on my feedback. I'm still waiting. So this is what I'm talking about. If you want to have intimacy and repeatability with your client base, you've got to ask them some deep questions all through the process. How do you think this is going? What can we do differently? Because if you're really looking for a collaboration, that's what a collaboration is. Well, I've rattled on for about a half an hour. We have time. I don't know if anybody's got any questions out there in TV land, or if somebody has a comment or a question here, but I'd be happy to field any of that. Here's some of the things that we're highlighting. Be self-aware. Take some time. I'm not talking about just being an entrepreneur. As a human being, be aware. Find some way to get some feedback about your life. Balance your mindset. Make sure that what you do, all your metrics, your requirements, your daily activities, your email and your social media and your all that stuff is balanced with some real human contact. I call it eyeball time, where you're looking into the eyes of another human being and you're getting at the deeper meaning of that relationship, of that interaction. Selling and serving is continuous and it interacts. Serving is continuous and interacts. And by all means, be a lifetime learner. Read stuff. Any of the things that I mentioned today are available in the free market. You can read about cultural engagement. You can read about emotional intelligence. You can read about strengths. You can go to Gallup's website. They have all kinds of great stuff. You can go anywhere, and you can talk to people. And do it here. Do it with each other. You know, make Office Center more than just a place you park your laptop once in a while. Make it a place where you're actually interacting with people and you're talking about stuff that actually matters. Do that. I've met some really good friends here, and it's nice to see them, and we talk about those kind of things. That's basically what I had to say, and I made it all up. Just for today. So, any questions? I know you had a question over there, I think.
Yeah, you're talking about the test to know your strength.
Yes.
But if English is my second language,
Oh.
how accurate is it?
How do you do that?
I mean, it's how accurate, because like it tests your IQ.
Oh, no, it doesn't test your IQ. No.
It's much simpler than that.
No. Let me address that question in some depth. Psychological and personality assessments are they're all over the board. Okay, and if you're talking about, how do I really understand myself, you may want to go to a psychologist and take the MMPI or something like that. You may want to do that. But for business purposes, something like Strength Finders, like I said, it's $20. You take it on, huh?
$14.99 on Amazon. I just looked it up, and it's the best $14.99.
And it gives you a
Well, it's it's no wonder retailers cannot compete online.
So what is it?
Strengths Finders. We'll show you.
What it does is helps you understand the things that you're good at.
Yeah.
And the general theory behind strengths is that it does you no good in life to be doing things you just aren't good at. Plain and simple.
Find the things you like. Do that more.
Well, find out
Okay.
the things that you have,
That you're good at.
that you have some capabilities and some competencies in, and then work on that. Meaning, it doesn't do a lot of good to work on your weaknesses, because you're probably always going to be.
Just like you said, learning is like a lifelong process.
Well, I just think every human being needs to learn continuously throughout their life. I don't think that should ever stop. I think one should read a lot, particularly in areas that you're working in.
Yeah.
But the Strength Finders is a really useful little tool. Let me address emotional intelligence a little bit. 2.0. It's also, you can take the same test. It's not the same kind of thing as Strength Finders. And there are some things that it would be really good if you were working with someone who understood what it's actually measuring. See, and chances are you're not going to score as high as you think you do when you take Strength Finder, when you take the EQ test. Because it's so contingent on your life experiences, how things are going. It's very difficult to be outwardly positive if your inward stuff isn't positive. And that's why this whole notion of feedback and coaching and peer group information is so crucial, because people that you trust can give you some good information. Yeah.
Well, so then wouldn't that be different, like on any given day?
Could be.
Yes.
Depending on your mindset when you're
Yes.
making it.
Right.
That's why it's subjective
Yes.
to what he's saying.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you could read between the lines if you honestly know that you're reading I don't care what test you take, or Strength Finders or whatever, and just try and just have a middle ground and go, overall, this is how I feel. Or
Sure.
overall, this is how I respond, rather than trying to associate it to any one type of scenario or situation. Then.
And what's good about
And
it?
then there's evolution too. I mean, you will evolve over time. If you took it 5 years ago and you take it today, you may have developed some of those skills more naturally. But I think it helps you to really set where your path is going to be and where your focus and concentration is. Because I think there is, like you say, you don't take it once in your life and that's your strength.
Right.
Because, you know, you have so many outside stimulation that are coming in that you can develop strengths in different areas.
And
So
the-
is that
and-
true with Strengths Finder too?
Yes.
You think that changes too?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I should take that again.
Yeah, if you took it a long time ago, you
Yeah.
take it now, I think that, you know, you could be in a different spot. It's fun
Good
to,
to
fun to
know.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
not,
the
if
thing
you've
about
been consistent.
Yeah.
That's good too.
the thing about dialogue and feedback, either working with a coach or someone who's experienced in those areas, or even a good peer group, is you can put it in context. You can say, well, okay, look, you got a little bit of a report here on how you're interacting with people. Let's talk about that. Let's see if there's a recent example, like road rage. Does an emotionally intelligent person get involved in road rage? I don't know the answer to that. I just made that one up. But in context, you can find out, is there something going on in my life where I'm not as authentic and put together as I thought I was, that gets triggered by something in my external environment? You know, if you have flashpoints, that often happens on a highway. Also standing in line at Target.
It may not be just about that particular
Yes.
instance, but
Yeah.
the stress or whatever it is that's bringing you to
Yes.
that point.
Yes. Yes.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Yes. Great question. Good question. Anything else? Anything from
Anyone out
wherever?
I don't know when to end.
Anything, Corey? They're all asleep.
Yeah.
We're not sleeping over here, John.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So towards the beginning, you mentioned how service is declining or somewhat absent recently. But in the service process, it's important to maintain a continuous or interactive process. How do you go about maintaining that continuous or interactive process?
Well, I think it.
Can
it's
you
a lot-
repeat the question for?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he was asking about how do you maintain that continuous interactive process with the client where you're finding out what's actually going on. And of course, it depends on the product or service. You know, if you're, I mean, in our case, because we deal with culture and behavior, that never stops. I mean, we work in constant communication with our clients about, well, how is that change initiative actually playing out here? You know, how are the salespeople doing with the new sales process that we helped you install? If you're a transaction-oriented company, that becomes a little more difficult. But it's important to follow up because you're going to learn something. You know, Mark, we have this. Mark has a statistic he likes to throw out. I'll throw it out because I'm standing up here, not him. 90% of customers just walk away if they're not happy with you. They don't tell you. They don't call you up. They don't send you a letter. They just leave. And while they're not telling you, who do you think they're telling? Everybody else. And so depending on the kind of clients you have and the relationship you have, you may want to call them up and say, can I have 10 minutes? Or if it's really an important thing, you may want to hire somebody to go out and do that. To go out and you know, we do these kind of deep qualitative interviews with our own clients' and they'll tell us stuff they'll never tell the client. We'll pull stuff out that they'll never get at, simply because people don't want to. They don't want to tell you. But some way, follow up, either an effective phone call saying, can we talk for 10 minutes? Can I come out and see you? Or can I buy you some coffee, lunch? And you develop some questions ahead of time that get at the nature of the relationship. How effective were we in communicating our value to you? Did it actually happen? How effectively are you using it? And open-ended questions are going to get you a lot more information than closed. Are we doing a good job is not an effective question. Does that help? Does that make sense?
It does. It seems at least narrow in terms of can I do that for all customers, or is there a case to be made on with that type of deep dialogue? Is is there a case to be made for interacting with a smaller group or fewer customers, but
Sure.
generating more profit or
Yeah.
more long-term relationship from?
Well, you're asking whether or not sample size is actually going to generalize to useful information. But the more you know about the relationship you have, and by the way, relationships, once again, are emotional. That's why friendships break up. It's not because the facts got in the way. It's because I don't want to be with you anymore. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it. That's the way the world works. But I mean, we could sit down and have a chat about that. And because off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, and I'm not exactly sure what I should say. Yeah.
I think one of the things, and tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of salespeople have a problem with, especially when it's a direct one-on-one type of meeting with somebody. They're afraid to call that customer back and ask them how their experience was because they don't want to hear the negative. And I say the opposite. I would rather hear the negative because I want to know what went wrong. I want to know, did I miss a step, or was there something wrong in the process? You want to know that so that you're not going to continue doing that because that person, if, like you said, they're telling everybody else.
Yeah.
So you would want to hear if there's something wrong or that failed in the system for them that, when I worked in corporate and I would go in and sell, but then I handed it over and there was a whole underwriting team that took it to the next process. Well, that was out of my hands. To sit down with the customer and go, that didn't exactly go the way, we talked about it. And, salespeople just don't want to feel that. They don't want to have to go through that. And now if you have that empathy for the customer going, I'm so sorry that had to happen. Thank you for telling me.
If I may, from the marketing standpoint, as a small business owner, it's really a big part of your relationship marketing strategies to stay in front of them, which can pave the way for them to make it a little easier to come forward if they are having an issue.
Yep.
But in relationship marketing, you're accepting 100% responsibility for the relationship. You're the one being proactive about staying in front of them and not just waiting for them to come to you.
And I think that's such a good comment from both of you. I can't make this thing go backwards. Salespeople also avoid trying to get at the exact solution because that takes a lot of work, and it also might uncover that you ain't the exact solution. But here's the deal. If you're not the best solution for someone and you sell them anyway, how's it going to go for the future? It's not going to go well. And we see this all the time. I mean, I'm so steeped in this now that I can't even have a conversation with somebody at Best Buy without analyzing how it's going. The guy came to my house one day and he was from the local cable company, and he was going on and on and on and on and on. And I said, hey, I don't mean to be rude, but wouldn't it be useful if you asked me a couple of questions about what I really need? And we ended up kind of having a friendship on it because I pointed out something really basic. You got to find out what people really need. And if you're selling in the absence of that, you're just faking it. You're just guessing.
I have a question from Marissa at Union Plaza. She wants to know how to draw out people who are passive aggressive with feedback.
Well,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah. Can you?
Yes, Marissa from Union Plaza wants to know how to draw out people who are passive aggressive with feedback.
Sure.
Well,
how do you?
Good question.
Well, first of all,
Marissa.
dealing with passive aggressive people is not easy anyway. But there's an adage in good sales training that says you've got to figure out who's doing most of the talking, and the questioning is actually how you do it. You can't accuse somebody. In fact, statements like you don't seem to have much to say, do you? It's not going to help. But say, try to get at feeling. There's questions that address facts, and then there are questions that address feelings. And sometimes you can say, I'm not sure I'm communicating very well. Can you help me out here? What is it that you're thinking about your situation? Soften it up a little bit. Why am I looking at you? Soften it up a little bit and try to get the defensiveness minimized, because basically we're all defensive. We're just, we don't want to talk about ourselves. We don't want to disclose what's really going on. Marissa, that's a really complicated question, and I think that's something that requires some real thinking on that. But making people feel safe, making people feel not threatened, that's where it starts.
I think if you look at the 4 personality types though, and look at somebody who's more amiable, that is passive aggressive, and they'll act very nice to you, they'll smile to you, they'll engage in conversation, but they hate conflict. And the minute you leave, they are never going to pick up your phone call again or your email.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. And that's just sometimes where you have to just say it is what it is and move on, because that's their personality type.
Well, it's in case anybody didn't hear, the comment from one of our attendees is talking about personality types. And this is actually one of the reasons I have extreme reticence about personality testing in general, is because there is a tendency and an ease to get into labeling, which is saying, well, I think I understand you because I can attach this word to you. It's one of the reasons the Myers-Briggs is such an unuseful tool, is because it's not even based on any kind of validity, but it attaches a label that people then internalize and say, well, I can't do anything because I'm an introvert,
And then it's ESTJ.
Yeah, whatever the letters. And my comment is not as any kind of rebuttal to you. I'm just saying in general, these kind of tests, are well, there can be some real problems.
I just say it that as a salesperson, you've got a very short period of time.
True.
From the moment you're walking into the meeting and meeting somebody to really kind of assess who they are, how they process information, how they're going to absorb it, and what type of personality you're dealing with. Yeah. Because yes, I agree. It's it's not to label somebody, but it's to understand.
Sure.
Again, who you're having the conversation with.
And you may determine based on your skill and your life experience that this thing is not going to go anywhere. But I've also found that if you can make people relax, build some real rapport, and ask them some non-threatening questions, it does help open up the situation. People do want help, and you want to help. It's a nice relationship. People who need help and people who can give help. You just got to find that match somehow through a process. And that's all we're saying. Anything else, Corey?
John, on the last slide that you were talking about getting input and information from your clients and members. When you have a client base of 1,000 people or more, how do you go about doing that without making it seem so impersonal by just sending out a blanket survey, or what are some of the best practices?
Well, you can still do the survey because you'll get some interesting data points. I mean, you'll get a broad spectrum of responses. But what I think you could do is you could select a representation of your client base and then invite them over. Maybe do a little focus group. Have somebody facilitate where you talk about how's it really going. Is there anything that's not working here? So, I'm not a statistician, but trying to get an accurate representation of a population, that's somewhat tricky. But I think you could do it once or twice and then see how did the results from the first group compare to the second. Are we getting the kind of information that we'd like, and is it useful? And then can we apply it? Can we actually effectively make changes based on the feedback we're getting? That's the
great way to get in front of your market again too.
Absolutely.
I love that idea.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's free.
I'm going to do that. I like that.
And the upside is almost always it'll increase your business with those that are participating.
Yeah. Well, what he's saying is that we have, when we go on to interview clients of clients, some of the feedback we get is, man, I'm really glad they sent you out to talk to us. This means they actually care. This means they're actually interested in our experience with them. And it does work. And you bring that information back and you can put that into play. You can make changes really quickly.
But you have to do the follow through.
Well, you need to do follow through. The comment was you have to do follow through. I'll tell you what, the worst thing you can possibly do, whether it's a cultural analysis, whether it's any kind of survey, is to not do anything with the results. And we do cultural surveys and cultural analysis, and we insist we will not take a job if they do not follow through. Because that's going to just irritate and make people even more cynical about what's bothering them. Okay? Well, I've enjoyed this. I hope it's useful to you.
Why did it take us so long, John?
What?
I don't know, that we got you up here talking about the things that mattered to us. You know what? We have shared through the years some fantastic conversations. And thinking about where we were when we first started out, about how we were going to build collaborative culture and how people were going to come in, there were a lot of the conversations that we had that you helped me formulate in my head how we were going to do that. And then I said to look at it all these years later, not just with 620 virtual clients, but our 287 internal client companies, and have 1,100 people who are working in a collaborative environment, more so than they do in, I think, a lot of other collaborative, so-called collaborative spaces. I'm just really proud of the work that we've done, and yet there's so much more to do, because offices aren't about four walls. And sales isn't just about selling, and we have to put our emotion in our heart and really care about what we do. Thank you all for coming. What is going to happen to this afternoon when Corey finishes the process is that we will have this on our YouTube channel. So anyone that you want to share this presentation with today, we'll make sure that you get the link. It'll be on our video page, which is a new part. I wish we could go up and show it on the screen, but if you look on the Office Center or the Virtual Office Center website, there's a full video page. This will be at the top. And because I think it was so good, we'll put it in This Week at Office Centers, which is the weekly little blurb that we send out that tells you what's happening during the week. We'll put a link into that as well. And maybe there's something that we can do to help stimulate all of our businesses, because I know that when I saw that, I wanted to thrill customers. I think all of us want to thrill our customers. How can we do that together, and how can we help one another get to the next level? Thank you so much. You are just a good friend and a good client. Thanks a lot. Next month. I forgot. I was so engaged in what was happening today. But next month on September 29th at noon, we have Chris Newcomer with Firefly Sisterhood, who's one of our clients over at Park. She is going to do a presentation on what to say when you don't know what to say. She is going to teach us some insight, how to listen, how to do empathetic listening, and make it easier to go through difficult conversations. Skills for just navigating challenging situations in general. And the Firefly Sisterhood is a community-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster one-on-one connection between women who were recently diagnosed with breast cancer and are inspirational survivors, and they pair them up one-on-one so that they have partners while they're going through their journeys and things like that. People who are of a similar age group and background and everything, so that they can really relate to one another. But her learning and her listening and learning techniques are good for everyone. So I hope you join us next week, next 29th at noon, and it's over at Park. Right. Okay, thanks. And next week we have not a lot coming up in the next couple of days, but September, the calendar is so full. Please look and see what we have coming up for September. I think there are multiple topics every single week in September. Thank you so much.